What's going on, guys? Pedro here with Four Wheel Addicts. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a treat for you today. This Jeep behind us is not necessarily missing the axle, but what we're going to be doing today is actually we ripped the axle out of it already. What we're going to be doing is trussing the axle. So this is a 2017 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Recon Edition, and what we're going to be doing is trussing it with the Barnes 4-wheel drive truss kit. And basically, he's moved on to a point where he wants to run 37s on his Jeep. He wants to get a little bit more experimental on rock crawling, do a little bit heavier wheeling. So what this is going to do is going to allow him to run 37s with a little bit more peace of mind without having any failures on his axle. So real quick, we'll kind of go ahead and run through the axle and the upgrade, what we're doing. If you look back here on this table here, we actually have the full, all the pieces. It's not a puzzle, I promise. It's just the truss kit for the axle. So we'll kind of walk you through what we're going to be doing. We already ripped it out, and what we're also going to do on top of the truss, we're going to be replacing the track bar bracket on the frame, and we're going to replace the track bar bracket on the axle. So what we're going to do here shortly is we'll get started with cutting off the track bar bracket on the axle and on the actual frame as well, and then we're going to just kind of mock up the axle again just with the lower control and the upper control arm bolts, and we're going to just kind of tack the brackets in place, and then we'll start assembling pretty much everything. We'll figure out what we need to clean up as far as the axle, what we're going to grind off to be able to get a good penetration on the welds. We'll probably be heating up the actual pumpkin housing on the axle to get it to temperature, so that when we weld onto that cast, it comes out and makes a good bond, and then we'll be wrapping it with blankets after to let it cool down. If you look over here, what we've actually done is we've actually pre-painted the inside portion of the actual truss. We used Steelite and covered all the interior of the truss with the paint to allow it to have better protection. If you've used Steelite before, you know that it's a weldable paint, so that's going to allow us to still continue to get a good weld onto the axle, but protecting the interior of the truss. Just a little extra measure we're taking today. So if you're in the process, or if you ever considered trussing your axle on your Jeep, or you're potentially thinking about running 37s on your Jeep, stay tuned, because this is actually going to come in handy. You'll be able to see the process that it takes outside of actually ripping the axle out. We'll show you everything. Another note I'd like to add is that we've actually already ripped out the whole assembly, the carrier out of the Jeep, just because this comes with the E-locker. If you have a Rubicon, it comes with the E-locker on the housing. And just to be safe, I don't want to damage anything, the seals and everything on that. We removed everything, and we're going to be heating it up, welding it, and we'll get going with that. So if this is something you're interested, stay tuned. We got a treat for you. And again, if you like what you see, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Your support's greatly appreciated, and we'll dive into the project. So I went ahead and cleaned up the track bar bracket, cut it out with the plasma cutter. You can see all the mounting points here where it was before. It's, of course, with the plasma cutter, it's quick work. We made real quick work with it. And here is the new track bar bracket that's going to sit on there. And as you can see, it sits nice and flush on there. It just sits right on the actual tubing, just as it should. We're going to do some more grinding and cleaning up on here, and it should be a lot easier. Alright, so the next part we're going to be doing, because we're replacing this side, we're going to be replacing this track bar bracket here. But for that, we have a few things that are in the way. Well, we're going to move this sway bar out of the way, but the fitment arm here, as you can see, is really close. The gearbox is, you can see the fitment arm here. The gearbox is right here. These 4 bolts go to the actual gearbox. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna loosen up these bolts, and I'm gonna basically just move the gearbox up a little bit. I'll probably use something to hold it up, maybe a strap holding it up out of the way. And then we're gonna come over here and we're gonna actually cut this off. But before I do that, I'm gonna probably take something to mark the sides here where the stock one sits currently, just so that we have, and I'm probably gonna measure, I'm gonna take a couple measurements, probably from here to here, or where the beginning of the weld, to know exactly where it sits. Ideally you want to just find something that's not going to move. Obviously this ain't moving. I'm going to take a measurement from here, and I'll probably do the same on the back. This isn't something that you have to do, just because when you put the other one, it really just sits where it needs to go. But just to be safe and I have a good starting point, I want to probably mark it and measure. That way I have a point of where I'm going to go through. So, and it just basically sits pretty much in the middle here of this actual shock, the shock mount, or the upper shock bucket, or this coil bucket, and it just kind of lines up right down here. And then what I was talking about earlier is we're going to probably take, because the other one looks basically the same, like this, smooth. I'm going to make a custom gusset that runs probably from somewhere down here to the upper bucket. And what that's going to create is basically going to make this a rigid piece. That'll be something that I'm just adding for extra reinforcement. That's not something that they sell at barns or anywhere else, but that's what I've done in the last few projects, and it really just stiffens this up real nice. So we're gonna go ahead and get that going, and we'll keep you updated as we go. All right guys, so we went ahead and we loosened up the gearbox. Thankfully it came out real easy. This was it's a fairly newer car, so there was no struggle, no fight to remove it. We loosened it up, we strapped it up top, and it's actually being held up right now, completely out of the way. So the next step, what we're gonna do now, is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this all out. I'm gonna cut out that bracket, clean it up. I'm gonna start with the plasma cutter. I'm gonna remove it in a few pieces, get down to just the welds, and then I'm gonna grind it down, clean it up as best as possible, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is gonna be setting the axle and putting the track bar just to mock it in the right angle so that everything's sitting where it needs to be. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. We've already gone ahead and disconnected the ground from the terminals on the battery, because I'm gonna start with the plasma cutter and then welding. Just a precautionary measure you want to do to protect the electronics in the vehicle. Disconnect your battery just to be safe. And we'll go ahead and set our ground. So we just tacked the track bar bracket. We put the axle back on to fit the track bar bracket on the axle side. We just pretty much put it in place right now and fit it on the track bar, and it seems to be in the good. We got it marked out where we're going to clean up, and it seems to be all in good place. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to tack the actual bracket here in place. There it goes, fits right here, and we're going to tack that in place, and that's going to allow us to be able to continue to burn the rest of the axle truss. So the geometry seems to be good on the actual track bar, so we can proceed to do the rest. If you're going to be cutting this here, if you buy the truss, it's probably a good idea to replace the actual track bar bracket on the axle side as well, just because once you put the truss here, your room to work is going to be minimized a little bit with the truss. So if you're going to do this truss, definitely do the track bar on the axle for sure. You can probably hold off on the actual frame side if you don't feel like doing that, but for sure this one's a good idea to replace when you're doing that, because it'll be a little harder to cut off once the truss is in place. So Vicky here, who came to make an appearance today, is actually cleaning up some of the welds with the wire brush. But this thing came out pretty freaking nice. There's that big gusset there that goes up. It just basically follows the upper coil bucket, and as you can see here, we were making sure that it cleared the sway bar. And it does, which makes it nice. But here's a close-up of it. And it should hold up to some pretty serious abuse there. I don't think he'll have any problems with the track bar bracket failing. So this is exactly what we're trying to do. So now we're going to move on to the fun part, which the fun part here is going to be the axle that we have here. We've been prepping all day, and Emmanuel was grinding it up. Victor came over and was helping as well while I was prepping the track bar over there. And now here we are. This thing just turns out, look at this. Track bar bracket was welded, was tacked on place. I'm going to burn that in. This is really clean. It's down to every little bit. Look at that. Shiny. It's gonna make for nice quick work. So once we're done with that, we're gonna go ahead and let it cool down. But I'm gonna start by burning the track bar bracket in place, and then we'll move on to the next step. So So we've actually just tacked the whole truss in place. As you can see right here, everything's where it needs to be. It's nice and snug. We tacked it in place, and what we're gonna do now is we're gonna stitch weld it. We're gonna stitch weld it in pieces. We're gonna work our way a little bit, possibly on the outside, on the other side, kind of skip around, just to keep ourselves from overheating the actual axle and defeating the purpose of what we're doing. I know that I mentioned it earlier, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to overheat the axle and stress it out to the point where it's going to actually warp and it'll defeat everything you're trying to do. So what we're going to do, as I mentioned, stitch it in different places, and then we're going to heat the pumpkin about 400 to 450 degrees, and then we're going to burn it. And once we're done with the welding on that portion, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it with a couple of blankets, and then we're going to let it cool down slowly. So the reason why you do that is you don't want the axle housing to cool down too quick, which what could happen is the welds can crack. The welding on the actual cast is not quite the same as in mild steel, so it's got to be handled a little different. That's why we're preheating it so that it melts better, it bonds a little bit better, and as you're melting those welds, you want them to bond as best as possible. So it looks really good so far. The track bar bracket is already burnt in place. That one's fully burnt in place where it needs to be, as opposed to the rest of the truss. It turned out to be really good. We lined it up and everything lined up perfectly when we put the axle in place. We put the track bar bracket to make sure it had the position where it needed to be, and it turned out really good. And that one's burned in place 100%, so the rest that needs to burn in place is just the truss. So stay tuned and we'll go ahead and get started with the burning or the welding of the rest of the truss, and we'll keep you posted as we're moving along. Now that we've burned in the whole truss, everything's welded where it needs to be. The last piece of the puzzle is going to be to weld onto the actual housing. In this place, we're going to be using a torch with MAP gas, and we have a thermometer here, an infrared thermometer, which as you turn it on, it just kind of tells you the temperature. We're going to start working a little pieces at a time. So we're going to work this side first. We're going to move on to the other side. Then we'll go to the back side, and we'll burn the whole thing and then wrap it in a blanket. We're going to potentially leave it overnight, cool down, take its time. Then tomorrow morning, start assembling it back up. We have one more thing that we need to do, which is going to be putting the tabs for the steering stabilizer. So we're going to paint everything else with the exception of the front of the track bar bracket. Tomorrow, once we put everything in place, we're going to weld that one in place as we're doing it, as we're putting it back together. But it should be pretty straightforward. If you have a torch, this one has an extension. You don't have to necessarily use one like this. You don't even have to use MAP gas. We're just using that because that's what I have. And we're going to heat it up. Once we get to somewhere between 400 to 450 degrees, we'll start burning it in place. So we'll keep you posted as we're going, but stay tuned and we'll get this wrapped up hopefully today. guys, we're the next morning now. Everybody's here. We got all hands on deck today. We actually wrapped it up last night. After we welded onto the cast, we wrapped it with a couple of fiberglass blankets. Let it cool down slowly to prevent any cracking. We've already cleaned up the axle today, and thankfully there's no cracks on the welds. I think we heated it up to about 400, 450, and then we started burning into it. We melted pretty good into the cast, and it seems to be pretty good. We put some pretty thick passes onto the cast portion of it. So as you can see here, it's about 10 pieces all together. Once it's all welded, it turned into a nice solid truss. It's cleaned up now, ready for painting. We basically took a wire wheel, cleaned up all the welds, and any spatter we actually ground it down with a grinder as well. But I think the most important part on something like this is spreading the welding throughout so it doesn't overheat, and then having an extra set of hands when you're heating it up, and an infrared thermometer to actually monitor the temperature of the cast before welding it. So it actually turned out really nice. The track bar bracket is super stout. It's 1/4 inch. The rest of it is a 1/4 inch top with 3/16 ribbing on the under portion of it, but the top part is it's all 1/4 inch steel. Once it's all put together, it really fortifies the whole axle here. Again, this is a Recon edition. The outer C's are beefier, and the actual tubing is 3/8 inch tubing on the actual tubing of the axle housing itself. But I mean, overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. If this is something you're thinking about doing, I would definitely consider making sure you have something to heat up the pumpkin with, as well as wrapping it once you're done. You definitely want something that'll get good penetration onto the cast. You don't want to run something with a low-powered 110 machine, and then you're just going to end up with some cold welds onto the pumpkin housing. Prep work is key. There was a lot of time that was spent onto actually cleaning up, grinding everything down to make sure that we had some good penetration on the welds. And overall, I think the most tedious part is taking everything apart, prepping the axle, and then taking your time when you're welding everything, because there is quite a bit of welding that goes into it. As you can see, pretty much every connection on here needs to be welded, so there's quite a bit of welding. So if this is something you're going to be doing, prepare yourself for a lot of welding time. Which is good because you can get some more practice if you're beginning to do this. But overall, it's a great product, turned out amazing. It looks great. And now when we're done with this, he won't have to worry about the track bar on the axle or the frame side. We can show you real quick what the frame side looked like. I'll go ahead and show you that now. But overall, I don't think he's going to have to worry about his track bar or his axle for a while. Here is the frame side track bar bracket that we welded on. This is the gusset that we added here. As you can see, it just kind of follows the curvature down to the actual track bar. This thing turned out really nice. We put in a little bit of work onto it, but it's real smooth. As you can see here, all the way around. This thing's gonna add quite a bit of rigidity to that frame side, so he will definitely not have to worry about this breaking off unless, you know, he'll be able to put it up to some extreme abuse, and I have no doubt that it's going to hold. But as you can see, this extra gusset just adds more strength for the outward force. But yeah, no, I mean, it looks really good. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start assembling everything back together. So we're on the final step here on the Jeep JK. Everything else is already in place. The springs are in. We're putting the axle shafts currently as we speak. One of the things that I didn't install as I did the actual truss was the tabs for the steering stabilizer. Now, The only reason I didn't do that is because I wanted to do it right after I put the actual tie rod in. Right now it's just being held up by zip ties where it needs to be. Just to give you an idea, I have it clamped down. I'm gonna go ahead and tack this in place. And then I'm gonna measure center point of the steering stabilizer, and I'm gonna adjust this back. He is currently running the stock gear. His tie rod is stock. His drag link is aftermarket, and his track bar is aftermarket. So later on he will be replacing this, but for now we're gonna go ahead and put the 1/4 inch tabs here. And even if he runs an aftermarket tie rod and stabilizer, the tabs are going to be in place there where they need to be, and they'll be able to run everything closest to stock. So right now we got a nice straight alignment right there with the steering stabilizer, and I could probably make a little more tweaking with the actual once I tie it down and center it. So the reason why we mark the center here on the shaft with the Sharpie is that way you have full, basically once it's set to the middle, when they do a full lock left, it's going to move that halfway point. When it moves full lock to the right, it's going to go halfway point again, and it's going to basically extend all the way out. But this thing's turning out amazing, and we're really happy with the outcome. We're in the last step of it. We're going to go ahead and get this wrapped up. I'm going to get this welded and sprayed, and we'll build everything out, and it should be amazing. So stay tuned. Just wrapped up this project. We literally finished it up. It's all buttoned up. We just need to torque down the wheels. We're going to be bleeding the brakes, but as far as the truss goes, we're completely done with it. Everything worked out as we expected. Everything went smooth. We didn't really have any big complications on this one, but knock on wood, everything went well. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this buttoned up. In the meantime, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Your subscription support is greatly appreciated. Until then, this is Pedro with Offroad Addicts. My buddy Jairo's here. Emmanuel joined us this weekend. Stay tuned for more videos coming up. We're going to be doing that rear truss on this same Jeep, so be on the lookout for that. Until then, build, break, and repeat. Thanks.